Appreciate it.
You're welcome. We have the minutes to approve. Are there any changes or corrections on the minutes?
Where are the minutes? Charles didn't get the minutes.
Pardon?
Charles,
I don't have the minutes.
Do you have the minutes printed out, Tammy?
Oh, Charles doesn't have a copy of that.
I have the only copy I currently have. I gave Mike to sign.
There was one period missing, Charles. Did you catch it?
What's that?
There's one period missing.
I didn't catch it.
No, there's too many. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
All those, need a second?
Second by
All those
Charles.
in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. You didn't vote, Mr. Lundy?
Well, I wouldn't hear it, so.
Next item on the agenda is the variance of 10021 North Old State Road 67 is continued for last meeting.
Thank you. John Blair, Holloway Engineering. We're back this month. I'll go ahead and review kind of the history very briefly for Mr. Lundy. Property. This property was bought approximately 3 or 4 months ago by Bob Stewart. And the property was historically the property of Mr. Miller David. He had a larger parcel there. He divided a subdivision off of the north end, sold those lots. This basically, this parcel is roughly 3 acres in size, which the remnant after the subdivision was sold off. And Mr. David lived at least a portion of his life on this property. And as the years went by, he had multiple enterprises and homes built on this remaining parcel. He was able to do that under the county's jurisdiction. This property came under Mooresville's jurisdiction when Buffalo was created. And what we have is roughly 3 acre parcel with 2 houses on it and 1 commercial building on it. Bob Stewart, the new buyer, bought this property at auction, and each of the 3 occupants of the structures, the 2 homes and the 1 business, are interested in purchasing those buildings on the separate properties as I've laid out there on a large preliminary plat. And we do have problems, obviously, but that's why we're here. I'll go ahead and review the series of variances that we felt that we would need. First, Mooresville has in the agricultural district, which we are zoned ag, Mooresville has a 2 acre minimum if the property and structure is serviced with a septic field. So obviously none of the 3 lots meets that criteria. We also have a length to width ratio issued for lots number 1 and 3. In the agricultural district, the guideline is a 2.5 to 1 ratio. In other words, the length of the property cannot exceed 2.5 to 1 times the width of it. And I measured the width basically from the frontage obviously have a problem with that. Lot 1 is approximately 4.1 to 1, and lot 3 is 6 to 1. The final variance that we feel we need is for the setback, the front setback on lot 2. The requirement is 40 feet. If you remember, we talked about, this is an old state road, so it has a very wide right-of-way. If this were, for instance, in Mooresville, a typical street had a 25-foot wide right-of-way, I believe. I don't have, this has a 50-foot wide half right-of-way. So basically, the half right-of-way is 25 feet wider than a typical city street, which to today's standards typically we're laying streets out in platted subdivisions and things at 50 feet wide. So the commercial building is 22 feet from that right-of-way line. It's required to be, if it were new construction, it would be required to be 40 feet. So we would ask for that variance for the building at 22 feet rather than the prescribed 40. When we were here last month, there were 2 major items of concern. We had remonstrators that said that they had witnessed some work being done on the septic field, and they thought that for some reason that it might just be a straight pipe and no septic field, just a pipe leading out to septic trenches. That's not the case. We did dig the septic tank up approximately 2 or 3 days after the meeting, and it is roughly 10 to 12 feet directly behind the building. So there is
lot 2?
Yes, on lot 2. So there is not only a functioning septic field, but it does also have a proper septic tank as well. We dug it up, it's an older one, but it is there and appears to be functioning.
And there was a septic field,
There are trenches, and those are noticeable on the ground. But our issue last month was that a remonstrator felt like he might have witnessed them going out and doing some work on the weekend and maybe putting it in a substandard fashion and not putting in a septic tank. That's just not the case. The septic tank is there. I'll also point out that there have been no reports or complaints of any problems with any of these septic fields as well. Our second concern is that lot 2 is very small, and it is. It's 4/10 of an acre. It has a commercial building. It has, like we said, a functioning septic system with a septic tank, but it's on a very small lot. The concern was that if that septic field failed, they're out of business. What are they going to do? They don't have any room for a secondary septic field. So we did have soils tests performed, and if you can please look at preliminary plat, we have set aside a secondary septic easement for lot 2 across the westernmost 110 feet of lot number 1, just on the other side of the driveway. That area would be more than enough room to accommodate a new septic field for the commercial building on lot 2. And I'll remind you, the septic field for a commercial facility is considerably smaller than a home. They're not doing laundry, they're not taking showers and baths. Typically, they're sized per employee. That all goes through the state, and the daily consumption of water in a smaller situation, commercial situation, is considerably less than that for a residential household. That's all I have for you. I feel like we've addressed the two concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. If you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So we're putting a secondary septic tank easement onto a lot that's still not big enough to meet our requirements today, which already has a septic tank on it. So that would be two septic tanks on that lot if we had a failure on lot two.
It is, but I want to remind you that the existing septic field for the house on lot 1 is in the backyard.
So it's to the north,
It's to the east of the existing house.
okay?
The existing septic field for the smaller block house that sits on lot 3 is also in the backyard on the east side of the house. There is enough room in the front yard of the house on lot 1 and also enough room in the front yard of the house on lot 3 for an additional septic field. I don't know how familiar you are with the more recent and newest advancements in septic technology, but they've come a long ways.
The mound system and
The mound system, the Presby system, it's remarkable what we're able to do with septic fields now, even compared to 10 years ago. And these are all state approved. So we really do feel like we've got more than enough room for a secondary septic easement on lot 1, and more than enough room for an emergency septic field on either of the other two lots if things fail.
so I have a question. So the governing bodies that are requiring us to have a 2-acre minimum, they've not realized that the septic systems of today are better, and we still have a 2-acre minimum.
If I can comment on that, I really don't want to sound a 2-acre yard in most situations is an absurd requirement. There are a lot of situations where a 2-acre yard is required because the topography doesn't lend itself for a septic field to be built anywhere on that. So while the rule probably had good meaning and good intentions, we are setting aside secondary septic easements, first of all, that are about 2 times larger than they need to be. And we're placing secondary septic easements on plats, and we're burdening those lots with an easement that not only might never be used, but the then owner might decide he wants to put his septic field somewhere else on a 2-acre lot. It's not practical, it's not smart, and we've talked with all of the jurisdictions in central Indiana about that requirement. And it's a little over the top, and it's becoming outdated. That's my opinion.
Other questions or comments from the board?
John, you said, what is the number of employees in that distribution?
It's just a very small, family-run business. I believe that Bob told me 3.
Okay.
How close is the city sewer, long way?
It's on the north line of the William David subdivision, approximately 500 feet. We've talked as a group about this situation. There have been a number of homeowners in the William David subdivision that are experiencing problems. And it's just a matter of time until the sewer is drugged down that roadway.
Now, wait a minute. So there are problems out there.
Well, there are. Those homes are laid out on,
How big
all of
are
them are laid out on lots that are
How big?
no bigger than what we're laying out for lot 2. I mean, you can look at the scale
I can see that.
of those lots, and none of them have more than, I'm just estimating here, but I don't, just from scaling and viewing, I'll bet they don't have a 70-foot deep backyard.
So you're saying those lots are approximately a half acre?
I'd say just about, the one in the northeast corner is obviously a lot larger. But I would say they're probably roughly a half an acre. It's a pretty good estimate.
I don't know, John, looks to me like they're even less than a half acre. Just looking for.
Yeah, they're very small, and they're having problems. Those homes were built, if I'm not mistaken, they're late 60s and early 1970s homes.
I'd say almost early 60s.
Yeah, so they're 50-year-old septic fields. And again, we do know that at least 2 people have had problems in the subdivision. And there was a discussion at the town council meeting concerning this issue in one of those homeowners. I believe, if I remember right, he went to each member of the neighborhood and tried to see how many people he could get on board. And the problem is that they would need to be annexed into the town, and a large percentage of them didn't want to be annexed into the town.
Okay.
Because their septic fields are working properly. So, that's where we are. Our immediate situations, we've got 3 interested parties who are occupying these, paying rent at this time. They each would like to own, and we know that there are sewers nearby, but the project just doesn't warrant that kind of a monetary outlay to drag them that far for the sewers.
Other comments or questions? Anyone from the audience? Mr. Bennett, what's your, pardon?
I don't have any questions.
Do you have any comments?
If I could make one more comment, we're not here asking for an additional building parcel. All these buildings are all there. This is a quirk in jurisdictional problems. It all happened on the county's watch. Now it's in Mooresville's jurisdiction. We're not here proposing to build an additional structure.
I do have a question for you. If this was to be approved with the stipulation that if city sewers did come out there, that they would be required to hook on, is that a stipulation we can make in a motion? Would that be acceptable to?
I don't know that we can do that.
Why not?
I think that maybe before the sewer would be moved out there, they would get commitments from everybody that they would hook up.
I've seen stipulations like that on a lot of plats over the years. Whether they're enforceable or not would be something you could,
Would that be acceptable to the petitioner, you think?
absolutely.
I don't see a problem putting it in the motion. So if somebody wants to fight about it one of these days, we will deal with that then. But you probably have, I guess, is within 300 feet of your sewer. I don't know, you may know this, John. If somebody's within 300, the town probably could make them hook on if they chose to. They might do that.
They have
So-
that right.
Right.
When the sewer is extended any at all, it's gonna hit a lot of people quickly. There are probably, 10 or 12 homes in the William David subdivision. And, it's incredible how many people see that as a burden, having to hook onto a sewer and not realizing what it does for the value of your property when you hook on. immediate experiences.
In Packmore, aren't they on the sewer?
Yeah,
Yes.
So that's right across the street.
right to the back.
Is the hookup fee now about $2,000?
Fees it up.
Well, it seems like we're regressing if we have a 2-acre lot minimum. I hear what you're saying, that the houses are there, it's already existing. Any other comments or ideas down at the end? Well, if there are no more questions or comments, I think we have to take each of these variances separately, or do I read the findings of fact? I read it for every one, don't I?
Yeah, or you can indicate that that applies to each one, depends on how the board wants to handle these, whether they want to split them or consider them all at the same time.
I'm okay with reading it once. Is everybody okay with reading it once?
Yeah,
For all
read it.
3 variances? Okay, we're gonna, experiences for the development standards, and we've got 3 different variances. One is for a 2-acre minimum, which will not be met for septic. One is the 2.5 to 1 ratio, and the other one is the 20-foot versus 40-foot setback. Is that correct?
22 feet.
A Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve or deny variances from the development standards such as height, bulk, or area of the zoning ordinance. A variance may be approved under this section only upon a determination in writing that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner, and the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. However, the zoning ordinance may establish a stricter standard than the practical difficulties standard prescribed by this subdivision. With that, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we, since this is an existing,
I can't hear you, Charles.
since this is an existing situation, I would make a motion that we would accept the variance request for the 2-acre minimum, the 2.5 to 1 ratio, and the 40-foot setback on lot 2 to 22 feet, with the added stipulation that if sewers would become available, that they would agree to be annexed into town and then hook onto the sewers.
Can we apply that stipulation to the subdivision lots also?
No.
No.
Okay. I know everyone understand the motion that Mr. McGuire made. Do we have a second?
My first day I wasn't going to, but I'll second it.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We will obviously need to come back to the planning commission with a plan, so we'll do that.
Do you have any new business? Old business? Mr. Bennett, do you have anything? The paper have anything? Merry Christmas, everyone. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, we adjourn.
All those in favor?
I thought you were going to make a
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.